Good morning. Thank you for the introduction. Since you have a theme which focuses on various kinds of interactions, I would like to continue a little bit the introduction myself to make a point that is important for me. I'm often introduced as a theoretician, which makes me always feel a bit uneasy because sincerely I do not know what a theory of architecture could be and what it could be used for. My professor, Aulis Blomstedt, who was a charismatic teacher and a fine architect and a writer, he often reminded us students that the word theorein in Greek language, old Greek language, used to mean not speculating, but looking at something. And I am a theoretician in that sense. I'm looking at things as long as they reveal their inner essence. There's another area from which the idea of looking at comes from, and that is Edmund Husserl, the founder of phenomenological philosophy, used to describe the phenomenological approach as pure looking. And in that sense, I'm also a phenomenologist. I look at things, and I want to emphasize that because it's a very different road to understanding and knowledge than through intellectual speculation. I'm a farm boy in my soul. I grew up at my grandfather's small farm during the war years, but eventually through my curiosity and interest at looking things, I've gotten all the way to deal with and collaborate with some of the world's leading philosophers and neuroscientists and researchers. For instance, next year, in the beginning of next year, a book will come out through MIT Press entitled Mind in Architecture, in which I'm a co-editor. Currently, I'm working on a long essay on architectural atmospheres for a book with 5 leading phenomenologist philosophers. I'm telling this not to brag on my achievements. I'm telling this that there is a way from practice to all the way to research and theory, and I would encourage you to follow that road. For instance, in the field of neuroscience, there is a new approach which I find very appealing and promising, and that is called neurophenomenology, which combines hard scientific experiments with phenomenological thinking. And in most fields and most issues, there is always a encounter or a boundary between research findings and their interpretation, and the interpretation is always a philosophical one. So the aspect of thinking needs to be included in everything. How do I operate the... Sorry? Okei. Hyvä, kiitos. The lecture I'm going to give is something, basically a lecture which I prepared a couple of years ago for Yale University. There was a big conference on entitled "Is Drawing Dead?" The computerized methods have become so popular that there is a appropriate question: do we need drawing? I was one of the lecturers who emphasized that we do need drawing. Hands are generative organs characteristic to Homo sapiens, but at the same time they are unique individuals. In fact, our identities are almost as much in our hands as in our faces. Countless works of art testify the individual character and uniqueness of our hands. Hands can give rise to epic narratives. Hands have stories. They even have their own particular beauty. We grant them the right to have their own development, their own wishes, feelings, moods, and occupations. Rainer Maria Rilke, the great poet, observes, the greatest, by the way, in my opinion. The vivid movement of the contours, the vivid movement of the contours of Henri Matisse's colorful paper cuts obtain a special meaning after having seen a photograph of the aging artist warming his aching finger joints in the feathers of domesticated pigeons, or drawing on his sickbed on a sheet of paper on the wall with a charcoal attached to the end of a long bamboo stick. André Wojensky, Le Corbusier's, the great architect's close assistant for 20 years, described his master's hands poetically and suggestively. Then I would let my eyes go from his face down to his hands and would then discover Le Corbusier. It was the hands that revealed him. It was his hands, it was as if his hands betrayed him. They spoke all his feelings, all the vibrations of his inner life that his face tried to conceal. Hands that one might have thought Le Corbusier had drawn himself, with that trait made of 1,000 small successive traces that seemed to look for one another, but that in the end formed a precise and exact line, the unique contour that outlined the shape and defined it in space. Hands that seemed to hesitate, but from which precision came. Hands that always thought just like he did in his thinking. And on his hands, one could read his anxiety, his disappointments, his emotions, and his hopes. Hands that had drawn and were to draw all his work. End of Wojensky quote. Works of art and architecture extend the human hand both through space and time. We can emotively touch the hands of great artists in history, all the way from the earliest artworks of mankind. An artist is worth 1,000 centuries, Paul Valéry assures us, and sure enough, oldest rock paintings in Africa and Australia are already approaching the half-time mark of the poet's immense timescale. When looking at the Rondadini Pietà in Castello Sforzesco in Milan, I can feel the passionate and wise, but already feeble hands of Michelangelo. He is known to have worked on this very piece just a few days, 6 days to be precise, before his death. The work of great architects also invites the imagined presence of the architect's figure and hand, as the architectural scale and detailing are unavoidably products and projections of the maker's body and hand. We can touch the hands of Michelangelo and Palladio, as well as Frank Lloyd Wright, Le Corbusier, and Alvarado, through the buildings. The hand of the maker is always the more present, the greater the work. What is the hand? We use the notion of the hand carelessly and without much thought, as if its essence were self-evident. Frank R. Wilson, neurologist and writer, argues in his seminal study of the evolution and significance of the human hand, entitled "The Hand: How Its Use Shapes the Brain, Language, and Human Culture." This is what he writes. Bodily movement and brain activity are functionally interdependent, and their synergy is so powerfully formulated that no single science or discipline can independently explain human skill or behavior. The hand is so widely represented in the brain, the hand's neurological and biomechanical elements are so prone to spontaneous interaction and organization, and the motivations and efforts that give rise to individual use of the hand are so deeply and widely rooted that we must admit we are trying to explain a basic imperative of human life. Intelligence of the hand. We can certainly conclude that the hand speaks to the brain as surely as the brain speaks to the hand. Wilson regards the hand even beyond its physical and neurological significance as an essential constituent of the story of human intelligence and its gradual evolution. Any theory of human intelligence which ignores the interdependence of hand and brain function, the historic origins of that relationship, the impact of that history on developmental dynamics in modern humans, is grossly misleading and sterile. I would like to add that any view that misses our essential embodied essence or the role of the body in human identity, life and thought is equally sterile. We usually think that our hands merely deal with the concrete material world, but some theorists attribute to the hand a significant role even in the emergence of symbolic thought and language. One of my neurologist friends, Professor Michael Arbib, has done extensive studies in the origin of language, and according to his theory, which is quite convincing, language originates in the hand. Language begins with our gestures and then gradually obtains vocal components and verbal meaning. There are also studies that claim, instead of the usual idea that we have hands, skillful hands, because we have the brain, that the opposite is true. We have a fantastic brain because we have hands. Hands have created the brain, not vice versa. Altogether, the importance of human embodiment in everything, even thinking, has become clear. We are misguided fundamentally in a number of ways. For instance, Alva Noe, a professor of philosophy at Berkeley University, argues that we have failed to explain human consciousness because we have sought it in a wrong place. We have sought consciousness inside the human head. It's not there. Consciousness is out there. Consciousness is a relational thing. It's the way we are in the world that from which consciousness arises. It's not a property of hiding in the brain. So there are fundamental things that are now being revealed by science. What they mean in terms of design, architecture, and arts is something that has to be interpreted, and that is one of the things I'm occupied with. We can, in addition to the concrete tool and a skilled practice of craft or drawing combines imagination with the hand. Every exercise of drawing or craft projects determined intentionality and an imagined vision of the completed task or object at hand. Richard Sennett makes two basic arguments about the interaction of the bodily actions of the hand and imagination. Quote, first, that all skills, even the most, begin as bodily practices. Second, that technical understanding develops through the powers of imagination. The first argument focuses on knowledge gained of the hand, in the hand through touch and movement. The argument about imagination begins by exploring language that attempts to direct and guide bodily skills. Imagination has a role in perception and memory as well as thinking. I would here want to add that imagination is probably the most valuable and most human of our skills, but imagination has been mistreated through history as something secondary or something somewhat doubtful, but we could not even sense anything without imagination. So far we have been taught that sensing is something detached from thinking, memory, and imagination. No, there is no automatic system of sensing or vision. Every act of sensing is integrated or associated with memory and imagination. We see because we are capable of imagining what we see. Arthur Jasonk, a physicist, argues we could not even see light without an inner light. And mind you, this is a physicist, not a hippie guy. We have an inner light which makes us see. I would like to add that any view that misses our essential embodied essence or the role of the body in human identity, life and thought is equally sterile. We usually think that our hands merely deal with the... Oh, sorry, I already said this. I'm sorry. Thinking and touching through drawing. In addition to the concrete tool, a skilled practice of a craft or drawing combines imagination with the hand. Every exercise of drawing or craft projects determined intentionality and an imagined vision of the completed task or object at hand. Richard Sennett makes two basic arguments about the interaction of the bodily actions of the hand and imagination. First, that all skills, even the most abstract, begin as bodily practices. Second, the technical understanding develops through the powers of imagination. The first argument focuses on knowledge gained in the hand through touch and movement. The argument about imagination begins by exploring language that attempts to direct and guide bodily skills. Imagination has a role in perception and memory as well as thinking. We tend to think of imagination as a single, uniform skill. However, Gaston Bachelard, one of the philosophers who devoted his life to the understanding of poetic imagination, divides imagination into formal imagination and material imagination. I have myself written about empathic and embodied imagination recently, and suggested another category of imagination of life, movement, and becoming, which may well be the most demanding of imaginations. The draftsman and drawer need to develop specific relationships between thought and making. idea and execution, action and matter, learning and performance, self-identity and work, pride and humility. The craftsman needs to embody the tool or instrument, internalize the nature of the material being used, and eventually turn herself into the drawing or product, either material or immaterial. In his book, Berger on Drawing, John Berger points out this identification or fusion of the maker and her product in the craft of drawing when he writes, each confirmation or denial brings you closer to the object until finally you are, as it were, inside it. The contours you have drawn no longer marking the edge of what you have seen, but the edge of what you have become. While drawing, a mature designer and architect is not focused on the lines of the drawing as he is envisioning the object itself, and in his mind, holding the object in his hand or occupying the space being designed. During the design process, the architect occupies the very structure that the lines of the drawing secondarily represent. As a consequence of the mental transfer from the actuality of the drawing or the model of the material reality of the project, the images with which the designer advances are not mere visual renderings. They constitute a fully imaginative haptic and multisensory reality. That's an important aspect for me. We don't imagine drawings or two-dimensional things. We imagine full three-dimensional lived reality. We don't even have dreams that are two-dimensional. Our dreams are full lived reality. The architect moves about freely in the imagined structure, however large and complex it may be, as if walking in a building and touching all its surfaces and sensing their materiality, temperature and texture. This is an intimacy that is surely difficult, if not possible, to simulate through computerized means of simulation and modeling. While working on a drawing, one concretely touches all the edges and surfaces of the designed object by the tip of the pencil that has become an extension of one's fingertips and the inner world of the mind. Welt Innenraum, to use a beautiful notion of Rilke, the poet. The hand-eye-mind connection in drawing is natural and fluent, as if the pencil were a bridge that mediates between two realities, and the focus can constantly be shifted between the physical drawing and the non-existent object in the mental space that the drawing depicts. Sketching and drawing are spatial and haptic exercises that fuse the external reality of space and matter and the internal reality of perception, thought, and mental imagery into a singular and dialectic entity. As I sketch a contour of an object, human figure, or landscape, I actually touch and feel the surface of the subject of my attention. And unconsciously I sense and internalize its character. The mere correspondence of the observed and the depicted outline, I also mimic the line rhythm with my muscles. And eventually the image becomes recorded in the muscular memory. In fact, every act of sketching and drawing produces 3 different sets of images. The drawing that appears on the paper, the visual image recorded in my cerebral memory, and a muscular memory of the act of drawing itself. All 3 images are not mere momentary snapshots, as they are recordings of a temporal process of successive perception, measuring, evaluation, correction, and re-evaluation. A drawing is an image that compresses an entire process, and it fuses a distinct duration into an image. A sketch is in fact a temporal image, a piece of cinematic action recorded in the graphic form. This multiple nature of the, I'm sorry I can't somehow run back the images, but it's all right. This multiple nature of the sketch, its layered exposure, as it were, makes me remember vividly each one of the hundreds of scenes that I have sketched during 50 years of my travels around the world, whereas as I can hardly recall any of the places that I have photographed, because of the weaker embodied recording in taking a photograph. This argument does not, of course, reduce the value of the photograph as an art form of on its own right, but it underlines the corporeal limitations of photography as an act of recording experiences. My next chapter is entitled Drawing and Observation. In the last decades of the 19th century, at the time that photography emerged as the technique of recording and interpreting the physical and biological world, Ramon y Cajal, the father of modern neurobiology, insisted that all his students take lessons in watercolor painting and reasoned, quote, "If our study is concerned with an object related to anatomy or natural history, etc., observations will be accompanied by sketching. For aside from other advantages, the act of depicting something disciplines and strengthens the attention, obliging us to cover the whole of the phenomenon studied and preventing therefore details from escaping our attention, which are frequently unnoticed in ordinary observation. Without the art of drawing, natural history and anatomy would have been impossible. It is not without reason that all great observers are skillful in sketching." End of quote. This was not an art teacher, this was a founder of neurobiology. Drawing is a process of observation and expression, receiving and giving. at the same time. It is always a result of yet another kind of double perspective. A drawing looks simultaneously outwards and inwards to the observed and imagined world and into the draftsman's own persona and mental world. One of the finest exhibitions of art I have ever seen was an exhibition of plant drawings by Henri Matisse and Ellsworth Kelly. I had always thought that there is no draftsman drawer who could beat Matisse. But I must say Ellsworth Kelly's drawings are almost as good, if not better, than Matisse's. Each sketch and drawing contains a part of the maker and his/her mental world at the same time that it represents an object or vista in the real world or in an imagined universe. Matisse on the left and Kelly on the right. Every drawing is also an excavation into the drawer's past and memory. John Berger describes this seminal merging of the object and the drawer, herself, followingly. It is the actual act of drawing that forces the artist to look at the object in front of him, to dissect it in his mind's eye and put it together again. Or if he is drawing from memory, that forces him to dredge his own mind to discover the content of his own store of past memories. End of quote. This is my Professor Aulis Blomstedt drawing on the blackboard. And the chapter title is The Tactility of Drawing. When sketching an imagined space or an object being designed, the hand is in a direct and delicate collaboration and interplay with mental imagery. The image arises simultaneously with an internal mental image and the sketch mediated by the hand. It is impossible to know which appeared first, the line on the paper or the thought, or a consciousness of an intention. In a way, the image seems to draw itself through the human hand. John Berger points out this dialectic interaction of external and internal reality when he writes, quote, "Every line I draw reforms the figure on the paper, and at the same time it redraws the image in my mind. And what is more, the drawn line redraws the model because it changes my capacity to perceive." End of quote. It is evident that the act of drawing mingles perception, memory, and one's sense of self and life. A drawing always represents more than its actual subject matter. Every drawing is a testimony. A drawing of a tree shows not a tree, but a tree being looked at. Within the instant of the sight of a tree is established a life experience. End of quote. This is Berger. A drawing does not reproduce the tree as it manifests itself in the objective reality. The drawing records the way the tree is seen or experienced. Every drawing of a tree depicts an internalized mental tree. The initial mental image may emerge as a visual entity, but it can as well be a tactile, muscular, or bodily impression, or a shapeless feeling that the hand concretizes in a set of lines, projecting a shape or structure. One cannot know whether the image first arose in one's mind and was then recorded by hand, or whether the image was produced by the hand independently, or whether the image was produced by, or whether it emerged as a result of seamless collaboration of the hand and the drawer's mental space. It is often the act of drawing itself, the deep engagement in the act of unconscious making, that gives rise to an image or an idea. The second meaning of the word to draw, to pull, points to this essential meaning of the drawing as a means of pulling out, revealing, and concretizing internal mental images and feelings, as much as recording an external world. The hand feels the invisible and formless stimulus, pulls it into the world of space and matter, and gives it a shape. Quote, everything his eye sees, he fingers. John Berger comments on the tactility of Vincent van Gogh's drawings. This very act of fingering, touching the object of observation or dreaming, intimate or remote, gives the rise to the creative process. Similarly, in the act of drawing, this is Einstein's famous blackboard at Princeton. Similarly, in the act of writing, it is frequently, perhaps even most often, the process of writing itself that gives birth to unexpected ideas and an especially fluent and inspired mental flow. In my case, I write all my pieces almost repeatedly 10 times. During the five first rounds, I feel that I'm writing the text, whereas the 5 next rounds, I feel that the text is writing me. Paradoxically, it is the process of making and thinking that inspires thinking. It is beyond doubt that the hand has a central role also in writing. But not only the hand, as even writing poetry or music is an embodied and existential act. Charles Tomlinson, the poet, points out the bodily basis in the practice of painting and poetry. Painting wakes up the hand, draws in your sense of muscular coordination, your sense of the body, if you like. Poetry also, as it pivots on its stresses, as it rides forward over the line endings, or comes to rest at pauses in the line, poetry also brings the whole man into play and his bodily sense of himself. End of quote. John Berger gives a poetic description of the embodied acts, internalizations and projections that he envisions taking place in Van Gogh's drawing process. Berger is speaking about this drawing now. The gestures come from his hand, his wrist, his arm, shoulder, perhaps even the muscles in his neck. Yet the strokes he makes on paper are following currents of energy which are not physically his and which only become visible when he draws them. Currents of energy? The energy of a tree's growth, of a plant's search for light, of a branch's need for accommodation with its neighboring branches, or the roots of thistles and shrubs, of the weight of rocks lodged on a slope, of the sunlight, of the attraction of the shade by whatever is alive and suffers from the heat of the mistral from the north, which has fashioned the rock strata. End of quote. In Berger's description, the muscles of the artist's entire body seem to participate in the physical act of drawing. Yet the act draws its energy from the subject itself. It is evident that the common understanding of drawing or painting as purely visual endeavors is completely erroneous. Due to the innate and concrete spatiality of architecture and its irrefutable embodied and existential essence, a usual understanding of this art form is even more grossly, a visual understanding of this art form is even more grossly misleading. Multisensory drawing. When an artist draws a scene, the hand does not attend to duplicate or mimic what the eye sees or the mind conceives. Intention, perception, and the work of the hand do not exist as separate entities. The sole act of drawing and its very physicality and materiality is both the means and the end. Drawing is a singular and integrated act in which the hand sees, the eye draws, and the mind touches. The hands want to see, the eyes want to caress, as Goethe remarked. Or nothing escapes the great thinker. He knows all, he sees all. His eyes are in his ears in his eyes. As Brancusi describes the totally focused state of his sculpture of Socrates. The artist's hand does not only reproduce the visual appearance of the object, person, or event, observed, remembered, or imagined. The hand perfects the impossible task of creating the object's very essence, its sense of life, in all its sensory and sensual manifestations. The individual brush strokes in a portrait of Rembrandt or an impressionist landscape do not only depict the form, color, and illumination of the object. The spots of color, texture, and light awaken the object back to full life. Art must give suddenly, all at once, the shock of life, the sensation of breathing, Brancusi states. This is the finest sentence I can give to students of design and architecture, so I will repeat it. Art must give suddenly, all at once, the shock of life, the sensation of breathing. This is not, of course, a Brancusi piece. This is Giorgio Morandi, which are, for me, magical words. I have not given a lecture during the past 20 years without at least one image of Giorgio Morandi. This is to remind me and you that every artistic work is an open window to the world. The Morandi images are not just three ordinary objects on a table. It's a huge metaphysical question, and the question is, why does something exist rather than not? In addition to breathing life into the scene, a profound work projects the object's metaphysical essence, and in fact, it creates a world. If a painter presents us with a field or vase of flowers, his paintings are windows which are open on the whole world, as Jean-Paul Sartre states. This world evoked by a profound piece of art is an experientially real world. Merleau-Ponty points out the multidimensional and multi nature of an artistic work when he writes, "We see the depth, the smoothness, the softness, the hardness of objects. Cézanne even claimed that we see their order. If the painter is to express the world, the arrangement of his colors must carry with it this indivisible whole, or else his picture will only hint at things and will not give them in the imperious unity, the presence, the unsurpassable plenitude, which is for us the definition of the real. That is why each brushstroke must satisfy an infinite number of conditions. Each stroke must contain the air, the light, the object, the composition, the character, the outline, and the style. Expressing what exists is an endless task. Yet, regardless of the endlessness or logical impossibility of the artist's task, the masterpieces of art and architecture succeed in recreating not only the existence of singular objects, but the very essence of our lived world. Thank you. Onko tarkoituksena vastata kysymyksiin? Yeah.
Thank you very much for your inspiring and insightful talk. And there is a few minutes time to ask questions from Professor Pallasmaa. Is there some thoughts you would like to share with us? Yeah.
Hi, thank you for being here today. I'm Doremi, and I've been looking for somebody to ask this question to for a very long time, and I'm glad I can ask it to you. I live in New York, and in the Whitney Museum, if you've been there, the staircase is the most stunning part of the entire museum for me, because you can see the hand-drawn architecture that was done, that was translated into the physical form itself. And I'm wondering if you have any thoughts on that relationship between the hand-drawn floor plan and elevations and the actual product that maybe something on AutoCAD could never possibly do, I think.
Yes, I know very well the staircase you are thinking of. A genuine architect, when making a drawing for a staircase, does not really draw the staircase, but choreographs the bodily movement of the person going up or down the staircase. The genuine, profound architect also feels and designs the touch of the hand holding the handrail. The stair as a material object is a consequence of that bodily choreography. I think increasingly of my own art form, architecture, as a spatial choreography, which choreographs first movement, bodily movements, but it also choreographs attention, and finally it choreographs emotion. The essay that I mentioned, which I recently published in AD Journal in London, entitled Embodied Imagination, deals with exactly this aspect of choreography. And I have become increasingly critical about the use of computers in design. I would be foolish not to use them in certain phases of design. At the largest, I had 43 assistants, each one of them having a computer, but not myself. My worry is that if students are advised to use computers too early in their studies, they begin to look at the computer instead of imagining. My advice is that students should be given the right to work on the computer after they have passed a test or examination that shows that they have already developed the skill of the internal imagination. So what I answered to you about Marcel Breuer's stairway at the Whitney Museum, it's certainly a hand-drawn stairway because it is so empathetic.
Some more questions?
Thank you very much for the talk and the presentation. I was wondering, I maybe have two questions. That first is an easy one. That do you write yourself by hand, or which stage do you go to the computer?
I write my emails directly with the computer, but anything that requires thinking, I write by hand, longhand, and then transfer it to the computer, simply because even an old-time typewriter creates a distance between the text, and it interrupts the tactile connection between what you see on the paper and what is in your mind. So for me, writing by hand, longhand, is essential. And also many writers and poets say the same. They cannot write on the computer, not even the typewriter.
Yeah, I think few anyway nowadays. But my question or comment is then relates that I fully agree with the importance of drawing, for instance, with the children in schools, but the writing thing is more complicated, I think, emphasizing the handwriting. That is hard for me to see the importance of that, if especially we do a lot of drawing, which is essential, I think, for developing your thinking and skills.
Let me interrupt here. Depends on what you are writing. If you are writing just, recording certain factual things, it doesn't matter. But if you write poetry, yes, it does matter. Sorry.
Maybe that's a good correction in there too. That it's the same with the drawing. That if you do technical drawing, it doesn't matter if you do it with the computer, but with the creative drawing and art, it has a meaning. Thank you.
Yes, let me reiterate. I do not have any questions about using the computer for production drawings and developing a project. My reservations are about the thinking process, about the phase in which things have to be imagined and felt in, inside your mental world.
I think this has to be final.
Hi, my name is Nam Kyu Chun. I'm a doctoral candidate at Aalto University. My question is a bit different, but let me put it this way. So I used to use this iPad to take notes. I find it very convenient to document and also digitize what I've written. But as soon as I found this notebook from the flea market in New York City, I fall in love with this and then I had to use it. What do you think about this kind of association with some different kind of method and tools that you find interesting? I think that's also, in a way, kind of influential. And if you think of this, your attachment to these tools, and sometimes you find some fascinated by this kind of pencils, or you have some history with, you got some a tool from your grandparents, or you're some artist give this amazing pen to you, then you have this strong association, emotional or physical association. So that's also, I think, interesting point in terms of using our own hand and different skills.
Yes, I agree with you. I would say no tool is innocent. Every tool permits certain things and rejects other things. There are tools which have an emotional component in their use and others which do not. So a wise, I think, would use different tools in different tasks in order to make the interaction between the mental intention and work as efficient as possible. There are things that one can easily record with camera, for instance, whereas there are others where you want to, invest more of your personal emotion into the observation, then you would rather do it by sketching. That's exactly the power of sketches, is that there's so much emotion in those little quick sketches.
Thank you very much. We will wait for your newest book. Thank you.